not gonna quit. Man, I'm being tested.
I'm actually not that upset about the dinoflagellates. They're definitely not fun by any means, but they're manageable. I've successfully beaten dinos in the past. I did that on my old tank. There's a video. First thing we'll do is grab this toy microscope. I got this when I was battling the dinos previously. And I'll scoop out a sample and put them on a little slide here and just see what kind of dinos I have specifically. It's always a first step. There's just some tips and tricks you can do for the various types. So just out of curiosity, we'll scoop a little bit out. Overall, I think the plan remains the same as my approach with the cyanobacteria. Continue to raise those nutrients because the zeroed out nutrients will cause dinoflagellates. I'm increasing the food with some pellets and flakes during the day and then 2 cubes of frozen at night. I am feeding the corals a couple of times throughout the week. I've lowered that one power head and cranked them up to get some more movement. I've added some cleanup crew. I'm going to do less water changes. So quite a few things here that will hopefully in the long run keep the cyanobacteria and the dinoflagellates away.
While doing a water change is obviously the opposite of what you want to do when you're trying to increase your nutrients. At this point in the video, I just finished beating the cyanobacteria with ChemiClean, and the last step of ChemiClean is to do a pretty big water change. So took that opportunity to go ahead and siphon out the dinos off the sand bed.
It's been 2 days since I did the large water change and siphoned out the dinos off the bottom of the sand bed, and surprisingly they're not coming back as fast as I expected, so that's a good thing. I just tested the phosphates, they're back at 0, so we'll feed the corals again tonight with more of the reefroids to get that phosphate up. And then I tested the nitrates and they're actually at 7.7 according to the Hannon checker. So the neo-nitro seems to be working and we are on our way to getting the nutrients back in balance and hopefully past this cyano and then following dino battle.
Unfortunately, that was very short-lived. Within a couple of days, the dinos had returned and were completely covering the tank. And I didn't want to continue to decrease my nutrients, so I started siphoning directly into a 5-micron filter sock. That worked pretty well, rinse and repeat hundreds of times. I also started dosing Microbacter 7, some beneficial bacteria to the tank. I continued dosing the Neo-Phos and the Neo-Nitro to increase the nutrients. Added some pods to the tank to outcompete the dinos. Fed the pods with phytoplankton. I dropped my lights to only 6 hours and my whites to 0%. And I even increased my temperature up into the 81-ish range. All that, and the dinos just continued to come back. And even worse, now they were not only on the sand bed, but started to creep up under the rocks and even touching some of my corals. So that means now I needed to start actually physically brushing the dinos off of the rocks and more siphoning. I was siphoning the sand bed pretty much every single day at this point. I also stopped scraping the glass just to let that algae be yet another source of competition for the dinos. So after weeks of doing all of this with really no results, I decided it was time to go with a bit of a heavier hand. And so I grabbed some sodium silicate, aka water glass, and started to dose this daily. Now the thought here is the silicates are going to encourage a diatom bloom, and then the diatoms are going to outcompete the dinos. While I dosed the water glass, I continued to increase my nutrients and monitor those. They started to get right where I wanted them to be. Phosphates 0.08, nitrates right into that 20 to 30 range, and so things actually started to look pretty good at this point. And after a few days of dosing the water glass, it was time to test again. Grabbed a new sample, looked under the microscope. As you can see, definitely still some dinos present, but also saw some signs of diatoms, so we appeared to be trending in the right direction. When it came to the nutrients, nitrates, they continued to hover right in that mid-20 range, which is exactly where I wanted them to be, so I was happy with that. Unfortunately, the phosphates seemingly overnight had jumped way up to 0.26, so this is now our newest problem. And so, with the nutrients being now too high, I could do a normal water change where I actually pull the water out of the system and not back into a filter sock. So I went ahead, did that, and then went to the shelf, grabbed a reactor, and immediately started to run some GFO to go ahead and bring that phosphate down. And I don't know why my phosphate jumped up so high so quickly. I'm not sure if it was just trying to do too many things all at once to raise those nutrients that all kind of caught up with me and then caused essentially an overnight spike. Now, I did add a couple of new fish. I added both a male and female lyre-tail anthea. I don't think just adding 2 fish would cause such a big jump, but it was probably a combination of all those things.
So the cyano, took that out, immediately got dinos. Got raised the nutrients, did that. Phosphates got too high, started to lose some macros. And then as of last night, I saw something on the glass, went and checked it out. Red flatworms. When it rains, it certainly pours. So here we are at the LFS, going to grab a wrasse, flatworm exit, I don't know. See what's next. Not a lot of fun lately. Just got back from the local fish store, BioReef, the one I always go to, and it's about 40-45 minutes away from me, so I really do try to maximize my trips there, which typically means I spend more money than I planned on. But first and foremost, still battling the dinoflagellates, so I got a few things for that. I got some copepods and rotifers, just more soldiers to outcompete those dinos, and then just really need to increase the population of my bacteria, beneficial bacteria, the good guys, the diversity of the good guys, the good bacteria. And so just to kind of help along with that, I grabbed 2 of these, I call them bacteria bricks. These bricks that just have tons and tons of surface area, much more than your typical live rock. And so we'll add a couple of these along with some new bacteria that I have not added that the fish store really recommended. And so just more in the fight against those dinos. And then since I was there, I been doing the silicate dosing. I've been siphoning them out. I've increased my nutrients. I've been doing all of that for a couple of weeks now. I think I may be making a little bit of progress, but just not as much progress as I would like. And so I went ahead and bought my next technique, if you will, or the supplies for my next technique, which is the Dr. Tim's method. It's a combination of Refresh and his waste away products along with a blackout. And so we will very likely get this started today. It's worked for me in the past. You may ask, why didn't I just do that out of the gate? I just wanted to try something new, honestly. I didn't want to, at the time, if you recall in my last video, the cyano and dino video, I laugh about it now. I said, yeah, I'm not too worried about the dinos. I've had them before and I've beat them. Just wasn't overly concerned. Just in retrospect, this has been an absolute nightmare and I can't wait to get rid of them. And so hindsight, I probably would have done this Dr. Tim's method right away, but I wanted to try, just elevating the nutrients. Would that be enough? Siphoning them out, would that be enough? Then went to the silicate dosing. Still kind of jury's out on that. I know it takes some time. I'm not the most patient person, which doesn't help in this hobby, but here we are. They're still pretty bad. I'll siphon them out. They'll literally be there the next day. So I'm gonna go back to what's worked for me in the past. And again, that is this Dr. Tim's method. And so we'll get that started shortly. And then lastly, the fun continues. And so I've seen red bugs across the glass. To combat those, I also picked up this workhorse. It is a yellow chorus wrasse, very well known to pick at lots of pests, but specifically he should do some work on these red flatworms. So that's where we are as of today. We're going to continue the fight on the dinos. We're going to try this new method with the Dr. Tim's Refresh and Waste Away, Blackout. I have to get that card out and remind myself of the various steps. And then also put in this chorus wrasse to attack the red flatworms. And then the lights went out. day one after the 3-day blackout. The lights have been on for about 3 or 4 hours. Everything looks great, but I am already starting to see some of the dino come back on the first day. Specifically, there's a patch right there. And as time goes on today, it's just beginning to get more of a light dusting across the sand. So we'll have to see. I'll continue with the waste away product. Hopefully it will keep it at bay, but after a few hours, I'm not overly hopeful here.
And as far as the nutrients at this point, the nitrates were still right in the mid-20 range where I wanted them to be. The phosphates, not so much. They had increased even higher and were all the way up to 0.39 at this point. Most of the SPS were showing signs of distress, but none more than this green slimer that was dying off more and more every day. All I could really think to do for that coral was to frag off any of the pieces that still looked okay, glue them to some new frag plugs and put them on this rack up here, hope for the best for them. And with the phosphates getting all the way up to almost 0.4, I needed to bring them down somewhat quickly, so I grabbed some Brightwell Phosphate E, and this stuff is highly effective, so be careful with it. Go slow with just a small 20 milliliter dose. The next day I was down to 0.19. And like I said, the dinos slowly started to resurface in kind of a light dusting across the sand, so back to good old siphoning.
All that said, today the tank really is looking way better. Previously I would siphon the dinos out and they would be back within a couple of hours, completely covering the sand bed and going up the rocks. Now I siphon them out. A light dusting may show up every couple of days, which tells me we're trending in the right direction and doing some good things. So I'm happy with that. The plan going forward is going to be to continue to increase the biodiversity. I'll keep dosing this Microbe Lift Special Blend, which is, if you've never smelled it, probably the worst smelling product in the hobby and my family's least favorite product on the shelf. You can smell it while it's sitting in the shelf there. So we'll keep up with that. It's supposed to smell that way, but hopefully increasing that beneficial bacteria population. And then I'm also going to continue with the water glass as well. And we'll hopefully see a big diatom explosion soon. We'll keep checking under the microscope, but hopefully those diatoms will show up and outcompete the dinos. And then lastly, the brand of GFO I was using wasn't really keeping the phosphates down to the level that I would like. I really needed to knock them back quickly with the Brightwell Phosphate E, so I did that. And then I'm going to switch out that brand with this Roaphos to hopefully see some better results on that phosphate long-term, keeping it lower to where I want. Certainly detectable, but not at 0. So we'll try that. And we'll just keep kind of going with that plan every single day and hopefully see less and less dinos, of course, until eventually we don't see them at all. My final thoughts, or at least best guess on what caused the dinos this round, goes back to the nutrients bottoming out around October when the nitrates and phosphates both hit 0. Wasn't testing enough and didn't realize that was happening. And then what I think kind of kicked it up a notch was dosing that ChemiClean, which did what it's supposed to do, completely knocked out the cyanobacteria, but I think that it also completely wiped out a ton of other beneficial organisms in the tank, which then just threw everything out of balance. So it's all anecdotal, I have no idea. It's my working theory as of today, but the last 2 months, they were super, super difficult, going on 3 months. Not only was I battling that dino, but problem after problem, as you saw in this video, just kept popping up and was really making the hobby not fun at all. And so as of today, I'm happy to say that I continue to see improvements. I really think things are coming back into balance and the hobby will begin to be fun again for me. So curious to know, share your dino stories and how you beat them, what worked for you, your most frustrating moments, anything like that down in the comments. If you have not already, be sure to subscribe to the channel, hit the bell notification so you know when that next video comes out, where I will continue to update you with hopefully positive news and things will be looking really good very, very soon.